I don't have to know everything in advance. I can just show up and trust that I'll be able to figure it out.
This is Emily Orton. Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm Steve Harris, but my grandkids call me Rivers. Here we ask a simple question. What did life teach you the hard way? Because a lifetime reveals things you can't learn any other way. On this show, we sit down with people who lived a little, stumbled a little, and learned a few things along the way. So pull up a chair, because what a lifetime reveals can steady another. Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm Steve Harris. My kids and my grandkids call me Rivers. And we have a wonderful guest today, a friend of my daughter and also a friend of mine, and her name is Emily Orton, and she is delightful. So, Emily, I'm going to ask you the question just leading off, and that is, what did life teach you the hard way?
I think a lesson that life has taught me and continues to teach me the hard way is where I have control and where I do not have control. And I'll say, for example, I am a mom. I've been married for 30 years. I have 5 kids, and that has been an ongoing lesson there for sure. And I'm thinking about when my youngest daughter was born. We have 3 girls and then a boy and then this youngest daughter. And everything went really smoothly like a storybook. And we actually had her at home because my deliveries were so fast that it made more sense for the doctors to come to me. And it was beautiful and wonderful. And about 4 months later, I started noticing like, hey, she's not really holding her head up. And we were working on a film project at the time. And when we got back home, I went into the doctor and he said, she's fine. But if you can't sleep, you can make an appointment with the geneticist. So that took another month. And then the geneticist was like, I don't know. I've been at this for 30 years and something's different, but we're going to actually have to draw blood to know what's going on here. And so then they did the blood test and we waited for that. And when that came back, they said, oh yes, your almost now 6-month-old baby has Down syndrome. And that was a really big surprise to me. I was only 34 years old and it had actually been tested to know genetically I didn't have a predisposition to that some of my siblings had. And so I was a real surprise. And I just was like, okay, I don't have any control over this. There's nothing that the doctors can do about this, and it's just a very concrete example of me just having to deal with the cards that are dealt to me. And it was, obviously now she's 18, she's graduating this year. It's been an incredible journey. She's such a huge gift. But in that moment, I just thought, I've done everything I can do, right, to be healthy and to have healthy children, and I just don't have any control over this, and just have to trust in the Lord and I guess create a new map. I didn't have any idea even what to expect.
I can imagine that would be really, really difficult. I think that it's really easy to say, I'm going to submit my will to God's will, but I have found personally that it's one of the most difficult things that I have had to try to do. And sometimes I do it pretty good and sometimes I don't. But I mean, to have to change the map, I bet you that was very difficult.
It was maybe one of the best things that ever happened to us, because when I saw this child and I got this diagnosis, first of all, I was grateful that I got to fall in love with her before this label was attached. But I thought, oh, I don't know what her milestones are going to be. I don't know how she'll progress. I don't have an expectation of how this will unfold. I'm just going to have to offer a buffet of opportunities and see what sparks her curiosity. And it really broke open a mold for me, because I thought, why in the world am I not doing that with my 4 other children as well? And I realized I had been putting all these expectations on them. And so this actually really opened up me as a mother and at that time, a home educator, really getting the kids more involved in what are you interested in? What's your personality? What's your learning style? What's sparking, your curiosity? And so that was a scary thing, but it was also hugely liberating, and it made everything so much better for our whole family. And the relationship shifted from me thinking you should be at this point by this time and being like, where are you? Who are you? How are you growing? What's exciting for you? It was more of a shared journey at that point.
What did you learn from her name's Lily, right?
Lily.
Really, that you maybe wish that you had applied, to your older kids? And did you try to go back and change things, or did you just go, oh, water under the bridge, sort of a thing?
Well, I am somebody who, if I feel like I've learned a better way, I try to adjust immediately. And especially when it comes to my kids, I'll say, I was doing this before. I think there's something better now. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience or any way that, was an impediment to you. I'm going to be doing it this way now. So we did that, and everybody was so on board and cheering her along and recognizing that she was going to progress at her own pace. And I think they felt that permission as well. And so, yeah, I couldn't go backwards, but I could say, hey, I've learned something better. I've always tried to do my best. Now my best just got a little better, and we're going to do it different going forward. And I actually would have them tell me what they wanted their plan for their education to be. Like, I want to learn about this or that. And I would say, great, I'm the resource queen. I'm now going to match up your interests. What do you think about? Do you want this mentor? Do you want this approach? And then I would be more of what would it be, like a coach or a counselor, advisor or something, to help them and try as early as they were able to have those opinions to put them in the driver's seat. And it actually reduced a lot of friction in our family, because it wasn't me saying, you have to do something you don't like. It was like, tell me what you love, and I'm going to tell you how that works with reading, writing, math, arithmetic, PE, and I'm going to make it fit what's required. And
Wow. Here's kind of a funny question that kind of pops into my mind. You've lived in New York City you're not currently living there, but you still have a place that you sublet. How many years were you right in Manhattan?
We were there from 99 to 2021. So that's like 22 years. And we would travel, but that was our home. I really believed we were never going to leave that place. And when we did, it was kind of on accident. We were just on a vacation and we stayed. And we flew back to, get clothing and smaller items that we packed in a little U-Haul pod. And my daughter came with me, and I was like, I don't think she's ever seen me like that before. I really just cried for 3 days because I didn't know we were leaving. I'm like, oh, I'm never going to see this crack in the ceiling again. And I don't know when, I was just thinking about, we moved in there with a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old, and we had 5 children by the time we left. And just thinking of all the growth and all the experiences and all the friends, I was like, this place is the museum of these golden age of raising children. It was very sentimental, very hard to separate from that.
What kind of New York City specific lessons did you learn? I've had 2 daughters that have lived back in Manhattan, one for about 11 years and then the other for almost 5 years. We'd go back and visit, and I love visiting. I don't know if I'd want to live there, but I love visiting. But are there any sort of New York specific lessons of life that kind of pop into your head?
For me, I always think that New York City makes you really grateful, because it just has the full gamut of humanity, and it's a very physical life. You are walking, you are carrying. For me, almost always had a stroller, usually with multiple kids in it, one strapped, wherever. My kids, even now, they'll try to hold on to my grocery cart because they're so used to staying safe by holding on to my cart. If we're together, they obviously run their own lives and live other places, but when we're together, they'll still hold on to the grocery cart. I'm like, okay, you're almost 30. It's okay. But I think it just made me so grateful, because it was so physically demanding and so intense that whenever anything was convenient or easy, I would just be so grateful. Oh, we found a parking spot, and it's in 10 minutes. It's going to be, a close walk to our house. Lucky us. Or, so I felt really grateful. Also, just that people are messy but worth it. And I always love to sit on the subway and see people from all different backgrounds. And oftentimes we get to talk to them. Sometimes we wouldn't hear their stories. When Lily came along, then we almost always would have interactions, because she would say what's your name? Do you have a girlfriend? No. And then she'd find somebody else. Hey, you don't have a boyfriend? He doesn't have a girlfriend? You guys should get married. By the time we get to our stop, everybody's invited to the wedding, and she's just made some delight out of nothing, and that people were so kind and so helpful. I had heard like that New Yorkers were cold. I think they know where they're going, so they move quickly. But I would always have people stop and say, can I help you with your stroller, or your backpack's unzipped? Or one time I was having a fainting spell on the A train, and I kind of just like went, I didn't actually pass out, but I just like dropped. I didn't have a seat. I just kind of went down in a squat and kind of put my head down. And like 3 people were handing me like granola bars or whatever. Like, do you need something? I just feel like New York City is a whole bunch of small towns just smushed together. And from the outside, it looks really intimidating. But I felt like living there, it was really wonderful. We thought it was a great place to raise our family.
I think that's a great description. I probably over the years have been on business or whatever, visiting my kids. Have been there probably 30 to 40 times. And every time I look forward to it, and every time I look forward to coming back home.
Coming home again. Yeah, come in, come out. I would say that the last lesson of New York City is just the impact of the current that you may not even see of the people that you're around. And most people are not in New York City by accident, because it is hard to live there. It's easier to live somewhere else. It's slower to live somewhere else. It's more convenient to live somewhere else. It's cleaner to live somewhere else. But people come there on purpose. They usually have something specific that they're seeking to achieve. And that brings an excitement and electricity and a momentum and a current that really spoke to me and resonated with me as like someone who loves to grow. And I think our kids were all influenced by that. And we spent a couple of months in Hawaii as a family. We were house sitting for a friend, and that was an incredible opportunity. And it's beautiful, and the ocean and the nature and the pace of life and everything. But if you are someone who is ambitious, it's very likely that moving to Hawaii will just take all of that out of you. Like, what's the rush? What's the hurry? I don't need to, it's no big, it's a completely different current. And so like for me, I thought I would love to vacation there, but that would not be a place for me to live full time. And anyway, every different kind of town has its own current, and New York City has one of people who are not afraid to be alive, not afraid to do hard things, not afraid to reach beyond what they feel like they might actually be able to grasp. And that was like such a fun connector.
I think one thing that I'd like to explore, I'm fascinated by, is that you've done some hard things. I'm reading between the lines of what you sent me, and I wonder, before you started doing all this sailing stuff, were you a swimmer, or did you feel really comfortable in the ocean? Or tell me about that, and then we'll talk about what you did.
I think it's a funny thing in the world. Like anytime you say, oh, I would never do that, then that's the thing that happens. So you got to be careful, because my family drove through New York City when I was a young girl. We were going somewhere else, and we're like, we might as well drive through on our way. We didn't get out of the car. We were like, oh my gosh, this place is so dirty. It's so crowded. When my little sister kept saying, litter bug, everywhere we went, it was like, oh my gosh, we got to get out of this place. And I was like, I would never want to live there, And so, of course, that is where I spent the bulk of my adult years so far. And another thing was that I did take swimming lessons in someone's backyard pool when I was a kid, but I was actually scared to be in the deep end of the swimming pool. I just had this I was 4 when the movie Jaws came out, and the ads were pretty impressionable. So I was just very certain that sharks would come, and as long as someone else was there and I could swim faster than them, it would be okay. But it was all very shallow water. Not an issue in New York City. Like, we almost never went to swimming pools. And even though we were surrounded by water, who's getting in the Hudson River? That's not a good idea. So it wasn't really an issue. But the first time I went to the beach as a teenager in Virginia, I was like 13 years old, and I'm walking along the beach like I've seen in the movies, and the wave comes in, and all of the sand suddenly left from under my feet, and I fell down, and then the wave came and just spun me around, and I had salt water up my nose, and I had curled my hair. I bought a butane curling iron. I was going to be really cute on this trip, and I was just a snarl. I'm coughing, spitting, and a mess. And I was like, okay, I get it. Like, me and you will just agree to disagree, and I will like sit on the sand and you'll do your thing over there, but I'm not coming in the water. And I really was afraid of deep water. And so it was actually something for my husband, who he'd had a career reversal, and after over 10 years in the Broadway industry, he was now like working nights at a bank, and he didn't love his job, but he was just kind of healing from the surprise of his show closing so soon. He started telling me about these boats that were down on the Hudson River. And then he realized, like a while in, that there was actually a little sailing school right near where he worked. And finally, I persuaded him to just go walk inside the sailing school and find out, well, like, how much does it cost? And could I learn how to sail? And he did that. And of course, they were eager to help him, even though neither of us had any background in sailing. We had no experience with it. And I was afraid of the water. And he found out he could get a class if there were 4 people. But because he worked nights, he was trying to invite people to come out sailing on a weekday afternoon. And nobody was available, nobody at work, nobody at church, nobody around. And so finally one day he was like, what if you and me and the girls do this sailing class? The 2 older girls, they were 9 and 11. And I just, in my mind, I was just like, that makes it 4 times as expensive. And then we also have to hire a babysitter. Like, we don't have money coming out our ears. I wanted something just for him, right? I wanted him to do something. I felt very satisfied with my life, my friends, the challenges that I had. But the girls got so excited, and I just reminded him, like, I am so afraid of deep water. Like, I feel really scared about the idea of going out on a little boat in the Hudson River. And he said, well, that's why you need to learn how to sail, because then you never have to go in the water. You can always stay on the boat. And I was like, what? I'm doing pretty good on land, but also because this part of me that always wants to learn or give opportunities to learn. And if it was going to be something that the family could bond with. Anyway, he actually was willing to take on a second job, like a temporary contract-based job, so that he could get the money together to pay for all of us and a babysitter for this whole class. We actually did ASA 101 down there, just tootling back and forth to Ellis Island. And we did that. And I was like, okay, this was, everybody got seasick the first day, but they all wanted to come back, try like ginger gum, or like we could try something. And we handled it, we managed it, and they had a good time. And then once we got certified, he wanted to take the whole family out on a little boat. Another disaster, a little bigger disaster. Like, nobody went overboard, but we lost hats. We bumped into things. Like, there was shouting and crying. The kids were scared. And we were like, this wasn't that fun. And then he started sailing with other co-workers. They wanted to go out just for a Saturday afternoon, but not commit to a class. So he started sailing. He got better at it. He knew what to anticipate. He became a better captain. And then he was like, wait, this is taking a family time. And we found like a little sailing club in New Rochelle where we could go a few times a month. And I thought, to me, that was like the max, the pinnacle. Like, I'm this cool mom. We go out on this little sailboat a few hours and nobody has their phones. We just look at each other. So it's bonding. We're outside. The kids loved it. So then when he like really upped the ante and said, hey, I think the 7 of us on a sailboat would be like enough universe for me. I'm like, I don't know where he got that line. But anyway, I was like, really? You think just like our family? Anyway, I just said, like, all these crazy fears were popping up in my head, but I didn't know how serious he was. So why should I like jump in and dash it all? So I was like, well, when do you want to go? And he's like, well, I want to go before our oldest leaves for school. And like, then like for college, right? Then he kind of had my heart, because it's for the kids. It's for family bonding. We'll have this experience together. And I don't know. I just kept going with it, thinking it wasn't actually going to culminate in us living on a sailboat, but he still kept being interested, and the kids were so excited, and I was getting better at it. So we took more classes, and the 2 of us actually went down to the Caribbean, and we did a double class. I can't remember what the class numbers were, but it was so we could certify to bareboat charter, and we both passed that class. And I was very nerdy about the whole thing. I was very scared. I was very poverty mindset, like, we can't afford this kind of trip, And I had my books and my notebook, and like, I better pass this test, and I got to practice all the moves. And he was like jumping in and snorkeling with the instructor and the other students. And I would not get in the water. That water was like 15 feet deep. where we would anchor or more, and there were sea creatures that lived in it. And but finally I just had this moment where I thought, what am I going to do if I'm living on a sailboat with my kids? I'm never going to go in the water. Like, first of all, it's a safety risk to have the second adult like can't get off the boat. And then the other thing was just imagining like what kind of message I was sending to my kids by coddling this fear. And so I said a little prayer and I started singing a little encouraging Sunday school song to myself. And I put on a snorkel mask and flippers and I just got in the water. Everyone else was already at a reef. I just was there alone on the boat and I jumped in and I started paddling, kicking as fast as I could. And I actually saw something big go around my vision. I was so scared that I didn't even know what it was. And I froze, which is like maybe not a great response, but I just froze in the water till my brain caught up and I was able to kind of move my head and look and see. That was actually a green sea turtle. Can you imagine like the very first time I ever got in the water, like a sea turtle just glides past me? That was pretty cool. And then my fears kicked back in and I was like, I don't even know what eats sea turtles, but it's got to be big, So then I could like swim even faster. And I was just like kicking so hard. And I'm sure you could hear my little song coming out my snorkel tube. But I made it over to the reef and then I felt safer because there were a lot of people there. Lots of options for sharks to choose from. Wouldn't necessarily be me. And I was met by what I now know is like a rainbow fish. And that's a fish that always has like kind of a smile on its face. And I just started following it down the reef and I could hear the little clicking of the fish pecking at the coral. And I could see these sea fans and anemone and like brain coral and all these different color of fish. And I just completely forgot to be afraid. And I was so enchanted and I couldn't believe that this world was so different just on the other side of the water. What's the separation? Really nothing. And my husband saw me over there and he tapped my shoulder and asked if I wanted to go back to the boat. And I said, no, because this is my new favorite thing. And so then after that, I was so much more excited about living on a sailboat, feeling like I could get in the water. This could actually be really cool. I would love for our kids to experience this. And maybe even more important than that is that it changed my relationship to fear in general, where I thought, if this was behind my fear was this thing that is now my favorite, one of my favorite things to do, what about all the other fears that I have? What if I kind of pushed into those a little bit and could find other favorite things on the other side? So I really take that fear as a messenger. I still feel it, but it was a huge lesson to realize this one little thing, me being able to just drop below the surface of the water myself, like how much of the planet did that open to me, right? Our whole lives are completely different in how we run a sailing business. But yeah, I learned how to surf. I got scuba certified. Like I used to not go in a lake. And anyway, it changed everything. Like I've heard a saying like fear is a mile wide, but only an inch deep. And that is what I experienced that day. But it was super scary.
So tell us what all this led to and your life on a boat and the book. Emily and I have been laughing reading how you described it as it was easier to live a year on a boat than to write a book together. And we've been laughing pretty hard about that. Anyway, how you got to that point, what lessons did you learn from that year living on a boat?
Okay, so one of the gateway drugs to living on a sailboat was actually homeschooling. That was another big fear I had, even though my degree was in teaching, to actually teach my own children at all their different levels in my tiny apartment with my husband working from home during the day. And I didn't feel like I had a good handle on my temper all the time. I just feel like it was going to be a complete disaster. And so I kept getting these little messages and conversations would pop up, that felt like the Lord was guiding me this direction. And so I did this prayer. And I don't know if you've ever had a prayer like this, but I went to the Lord and I had this huge list of why I felt like homeschooling would be a complete disaster. And that was how I counseled. I was like, here's why I think it's a terrible idea. It will be a disaster. It'll be the worst for everyone. And what do you think? And And only really the message that I got back was like, your family could thrive. It wasn't like, buy this curriculum, do this approach, have it this, there were no particulars that were, included in the response. It was just like your family could thrive. And so I opened up to that, and we made the jump, we made the leap. I was scared, one reason, because we had gotten into the school that we wanted, and they had a sibling policy. Like, if one kid gets in, all the other ones get to go. I was like, we did it. We won the lottery. Literally, it was a lottery. And so we knew if we pulled out, it wasn't like we're going to pull out and go back in again that some states offer. It was like, you're out, So we had a little bit of a stutter start, but we finally committed and we started doing that, and the Lord was not wrong. But one of the things we learned was like, we didn't have to be on everybody else's schedule. The school wasn't controlling our calendar or the flow of our day. And I think great, like, obviously I was scared to do it. If people, I just don't want anybody to hear judgment about whatever you choose for your family. I didn't want to choose this for my family. But once again, God was right. And as that happened, and we would say like, oh, we're going to travel in September while everyone else is going back to school, it started to shift our mindset to see more unconventional possibilities. And so then when my husband presented this idea of living on a sailboat, it was something that we had already built up some stamina for mentally, like, we could do that. We could make that work, and we could continue doing our schooling. And what a great experience, like what a great learning opportunity. And so once again, family bonding, chances to learn and grow. Those are my key motivators. And he was interested in this new adventure. He wanted to have, this is funny, he wanted to have a little more control in his life. He thought it would be relaxing and that he would have control in his life. Whereas when his show closed, it felt very out of his control. And so we did it. It was, all the steps and finding the boat and getting the insurance and the loans and packing up our house and deciding what to take. And we actually rented out everything we could. We rented out our apartment. We rented out our minivan. We didn't have like a big budget or anything. And part of our financial plan was we're going to sell this boat at the end of the year. So our year on the sailboat was actually cheaper than living in our apartment in New York City, once you subtract the cost of the boat after we sold it. So we got down there, we moved aboard as per usual. We were like, this is a disaster. This boat doesn't have a mainsail. One of the engines is busted. We're all getting seasick. But we sorted all of that out and we continued on our way, and we made friends, and we were really lousy at handling surprise storms at first, but we got better at it. And we had some really good training living in like 800 square feet, the 7 of us in New York, to now we moved to like a smaller situation, but it was actually a 2-bathroom and it had 4 separate bedrooms. So there was more division of people, and we have the biggest yard, right? The biggest yard ever. And we learned a lot. We gained a lot of credibility with ourselves and our kids. We gained a lot of confidence. We all got really comfortable doing hard things. I think going back to the original thing, life has taught me the hard way about control. I think my husband also learned, like, you don't control the weather. You don't control the ocean. You don't control, like, if this or that is going to go wrong or right on your boat. We thought we were going to have the internet. We never really figured out solid internet. It's not like Starlink we have these days. This was 2014. We actually realized that we had to relinquish a lot of control and be more observational and work with what was available to us. And for me, it was a huge lesson to have it on repeat, to go to a new island regularly and say, we don't know anybody here. We don't know anything here. We don't know where the bank or the grocery or the library or the laundry. And we're just going to go and we're going to figure it out. And it started to help me cultivate the confidence that I don't have to know everything in advance. I don't have to have the phone numbers or the addresses. I can just show up and trust that I'll be able to figure it out. That was a huge, huge, huge lesson for me, to allow things to emerge and trust that I'd be able to figure it out. And I actually learned that very often, as a problem emerges, the solution grows up right alongside it. And you weren't looking for the solutions before, so you didn't know they existed.
Thanks for listening. If something in this conversation stayed with you, it might be worth sitting with it a little longer. Sometimes that's where things finally start to make sense. There was a conversation where a friend of mine said, he needed me to be fearless. If that feels like something you want to explore, there's another conversation like that here. Most people don't do anything with a realization like that. They just move on and it fades. If you don't want this one to fade, we've actually got a place for that.